Welcome to this session of the Post-COVID-19 Condition Therapeutic Education Program. My name is Peggy. I'm an occupational therapist, and I'll be speaking to you on the topic of fatigue and pacing. During the session, we will review the definitions of exertion and post-exertional malaise and post-exertional symptom exacerbation. We'll talk through ways to support your daily activities, how to plan for events, and talk through why you may have had a crash and ways to manage post-exertional malaise and post-exertional symptom exacerbation. What is exertion? Exertion can be thought of as anything that stresses or strains your system. Many people with long COVID will say that they didn't do anything today and don't understand why they feel so fatigued. Exertion can be thought of in a number of different ways. From a physical perspective, if you've gone for a walk, if you've done some chores around the house, typically people can identify this as exertion. From a cognitive perspective, if you're doing tasks that require you to focus and pay close attention or process information like reading, watching TV, or filling out forms, this can be a stress on your system. From an emotional perspective, carrying your emotions like stress and increased anxiety, experiencing low mood can also be very draining. From a sensory perspective, many people identify that lighting and sound can be something that really drains their energy. Excessive or even just normal volumes of background noise can feel overwhelming at times. And same with lighting. Many people identify sometimes going to a grocery store, they feel like the lighting is too bright, and that experience can be exertional. From an environmental perspective, changes in temperature can really drain your body's energy. If your body has to work harder to cool you down or to warm you up, it's going to feel more tiring. Other people have also identified sometimes cleaning agents in the air. So if an area has been cleaned with a certain type of a cleaner, they find sometimes the smells can be quite stressful on their bodies. And also even with things like allergens or seasonal allergies, that can also trigger a lot of fatigue and cause stress on your body. From a hormonal perspective, many identify that pre or during menstrual cycles, they find that their symptoms can be flared up. They feel like more fatigue than usual. So just something to be aware of. This slide really just highlights that exertion as we know it is typically understood as a form of exercise. But as we can see from the different aspects of exertion, that there are many categories that can affect your energy. Post-exertional malaise or post-exertional symptom exacerbation is really that worsening of symptoms that happens after even a minor physical, mental, or any other type of exertion that we mentioned previously. These symptoms typically worsen maybe a day or two after an activity and can last for several days or weeks. So just to highlight that these symptoms happen after the activity usually, and it can be delayed in a sense that the symptoms don't become worse until maybe more than a day later. This is the challenge with post-exertional malaise, is that often the fatigue or that exacerbation doesn't happen till much later, and it's easy to overexert yourself and end up in this push-crash cycle that's detailed here on the slide. So you do too much, you flare up your symptoms, you have to rest a lot to reduce your symptoms, and then they sort of get into this cycle because it's hard to know during the activity how much is too much. People question whether they have post-exertional malaise. So here's a list of questions that you can ask yourself to determine if you experience post-exertional malaise. Does it take more than one day to recover from your activities? Typically, if you experience normal type of fatigue that's not related to long COVID, you generally can recover from fatigue in about a day or so. You start to feel better. Do you feel unwell, weak, have trouble sleeping, or have pain when you're recovering from an activity? So saying yes to at least one of these symptoms. Are you feeling limited in your ability to do your normal tasks after activity? So for example, if you go for that, 20-minute, 30-minute walk in the morning, does it mean that in the evening you're not able to make dinner? Does it mean that you're not able to maybe have a shower later in the day? Does doing exercise or activity positively affect you? So typically, if you do some sort of activity, you feel better, you feel well. With post-exertion malaise, doing more often leaves you feeling worse. Do you have problems focusing, thinking, or remembering after an activity? Do you find that you have trouble, maybe find that your brain fog is worse after maybe going for a walk in the morning? This slide is to highlight the difference between post-exertional malaise and deconditioning. For many people with long COVID, they are concerned that there is deconditioning as they're not doing as much as they were previously. While this is true, the root cause of your fatigue is not because you're deconditioned. Pushing into those limits will not make you stronger or feel better at this point. With post-exertional malaise, fatigue happens after the activity and can be delayed. In deconditioning, fatigue is typically felt right away after completing an activity. In post-exertional malaise, symptoms and your function are diminished after about 24 hours after the activity and can persist for more than a week or even weeks. In deconditioning, your symptoms can resolve and return to normal function within 24 hours. So after then you go to sleep, the next day you typically are able to just pick up and keep going. Symptoms of post-exertion malaise can include cognitive dysfunction or brain fog, decreased in your daily function, so not being able to participate in your daily routine, not having positive feelings with exercise or activity. You might experience headaches and some inflammatory symptoms like GI upset, orthostatic changes, and neurological changes. Symptoms of deconditioning are typically related to physical fatigue, muscle soreness, and don't tend to involve other systems. So after you've gone to the gym for a workout, you don't typically experience something like brain fog. Post-exertion malaise also does not respond to pushing the limits of your activity levels. So your body is not able to adapt to exercise or progressive exercise in the way that it used to. With deconditioning, a body will increase in strength and endurance by adapting to the exercise the more you do it and the longer you do it for. So if you go for a walk every day for 2 weeks, your body should adapt in the sense that it becomes easier, you feel stronger, you're able to do that same walk perhaps in a shorter amount of time. With post-exertion malaise, that pushing for the 2 weeks of walking doesn't necessarily improve the walk that you're doing. Of the 4 P's of energy conservation. So the best way to decrease the incidence of post-exertion malaise is to conserve your energy. So planning for the time of day or week when it's best for you to engage in this activity, think about where you want to do something, how you want to go through the task, and when you want to have your breaks. Pacing is important because you should stop before your symptoms or fatigue get flared up. This is the best way to avoid post-exertion malaise is to manage your energy levels. Prioritize. How important is this task or activity for you to do? Consider whether you really need to be engaging in it or whether it can be delayed for later or maybe somebody else can do it. When you think about position, consider the environment. Is it supportive of the task that you're trying to accomplish? Can you support your body in a better way? And how can you decrease the effort of what you're trying to do? Pacing is an activity management strategy that helps limits the number and severity of relapses or crashes and allows you to do what you can within the energy limits you have. The goal of pacing is really to minimize that roller coaster experience. You don't want to have those big highs and lows of symptoms. You want to stabilize your experience as much as possible to decrease the symptoms that you experience. It allows you to have some consistency over days and weeks so that you can be more aware of what your body is capable of managing. And in the long run, pacing also helps you to feel better. When you avoid the crashes or repeated crashes, it can help you to feel better and feel that you have better control over your energy. Try your best to keep the amount of energy used consistent across days. Days when you feel well, it's important to keep your energy use as consistent as possible. Try to resist the urge to take advantage of the good days. Often when people do that, they report the days after are much worse. Here are some ideas on how to save energy. Perhaps learning to say no to certain activities, or maybe yes to more breaks and rest. Consider how to prioritize your activities and tasks using 4Ds. So, do the task if you have to be the one to do it, delegate it if you can, delay it till later, or drop it altogether. Break up your tasks as much as you can. Don't try to push through and get it all done at once. Breaking it up can help you avoid depleting all your energy at once. Let it go to voicemail. Instead of answering the phone when it rings, you can use your voicemail to come back to the message later. You can then craft a response before providing an answer. Ask for help whenever you can. Hopefully, there are reliable people in your life that you're able to call on. Think about how to modify your task. Can you change it in some way so that you don't have to repeat the same movements as often? Can you set it up in a different way so you're maybe making less trips around the room? Are there tools that might be helpful, whether it's long-handled devices or maybe some piece of technology that might make the task a bit easier or offload some of your responsibilities? Take a seat whenever you can. Sitting down is going to save your body energy in terms of how hard your systems have to work against gravity. Limit your choices. Sometimes with decision making, there's a lot of fatigue associated with it. So if you can give yourself fewer choices, that might take some of the mental load off. Here's some ideas that might help with your daily activities. For self-care, some people have mentioned that they shower less often than they used to. They have to space it out during the week or through the week to make it more manageable. Having a bath chair, so sitting down so that you can take a load off, is really helpful. It minimizes maybe even some other symptoms other than fatigue, perhaps like dizziness, lightheadedness, that can be helpful in the shower. Some people have mentioned they've made the switch to electric toothbrushes so their arms don't have to work as hard to brush their teeth. A hair dryer holder might be something to consider if you're someone who uses a hair dryer often and don't want to have to hold your arms above your shoulders. And those long handled devices, maybe a sponge on the end of a stick, can help you wash your feet or your back so you don't have to bend over or reach as far. For things like meals, consider a food processor perhaps that's sitting at the back of the cupboard that might, decrease how much chopping or cutting you have to do. Perhaps a friend has one you can borrow if you don't have one. Having a meal plan or a meal rotation can help reduce that mental load of what's for dinner, what's for lunch. Having prepped foods on hand, nutritious snacks, things that you can grab if you're feeling too fatigued to make a meal that day. Perhaps there's someone in your life who's kind enough to bring a meal once a week, or maybe their leftovers to be shared with you. For cleaning and laundry tasks or other chores around the house, most people say one task a day is their limit. And some of those larger tasks need to be broken up as well. So if they're vacuuming, they're not vacuuming the entire house. It's perhaps a couple of rooms as if it's a larger house, or maybe one floor of the house. And to limit carrying, you might have somebody else carry the vacuum up the stairs for you, and then you carry on vacuuming the day after. And again, those long handled devices may be a reacher to help you get the clothing from the dryer or the washer. For groceries, if you're able to utilize maybe delivery so you don't have to make the trip to the grocery store as often, it may not be something that you need to do every week, but perhaps to just reduce the physical load of that. If you're someone that needs to carry groceries up from the car to your apartment, using a wheeled basket is helpful so you don't have to carry those items in your arms and make your muscles work harder. Using a list to offload that mental task of memorizing the items. Plan your way around a store. So if you enter the store and it's the produce section first, maybe those are the items that go first on your list. Put away your fridge or frozen items first when you get home, and maybe leaving the pantry items for later, or maybe somebody else could help with that. Sleep is something that people find they have to really prioritize and schedule and be a bit stricter about to protect the rest that they get. It's good to develop a routine around sleep. So perhaps it's an hour before you are limiting or turning off your screens to avoid that blue light. You are doing things that are more calming. You turn off maybe overhead lights. You cue your body with your routine as to winding down for the day. It's also helpful to wake up at a similar time every day as opposed to varying that. People find that that helps with their quality of sleep. Associate the bed with only sleep or sex. So don't spend a lot of time working in bed or trying to process other information or work on anything else. Really be protective about that space. Planning for events. There are going to be things that come up in your day to day that might be out of your routine where you'll have to think through how you'll manage that activity or task. It could be going out for, dinner with a friend. It could be a family event that's coming up that you want to be a part of, but there will be events that will require more planning. Reduce your activities before an event. So whether it's an appointment or a dinner party, try not to use up all your energy before going to the event. Consider how long the event is. If it's a full day, think about, when is the optimal time for you to be there? Do you have to be there the whole day? Can you arrive a little later and leave a little earlier? Schedule the rests during the event. It might mean that you ask about where might be a spot for you to rest during that event. Can you sneak out to your car? Can you go outside? But really think about how to support your rest. For transportation, try to avoid driving yourself there if you can. Ask somebody to drive you or get an Uber or a taxi so you don't have to spend energy beforehand getting there, and especially after the event that you don't have to drive yourself home. What is the environment going to be like? Is it going to be a lot of noise? Is it going to be really bright? Can you consider like a hat or sunglasses? Can you put in earplugs to dampen the noise? Is it outdoors or is it indoors? Now that the weather is warming up, that's something to consider in terms of how warm are you going to get. There are things that you can use like cooling towels, personal fans, things like that to help you stay cool if you're going to be outside in the summertime. How much socializing are you going to have to do? Are these people that you're already familiar with? Are you going to have to be meeting new people at this event? And maybe consider what you're going to share with other people when they ask you how you've been doing if you haven't seen them for a while. What do you want to share? How much do you want to share? And maybe even what are some of the words that you want to use? Having a plan for that ahead of time can help decrease sort of some of the anxiety that comes with that, but also means that you're more prepared. It might be good to have somebody support you through the event, whether it's your partner or a friend or your family member, someone who knows what's going on that can offer you moral support. So if you've been chatting with someone for a while, maybe they interrupt and say, why don't we go get a drink or a snack? Um, we've been here for a while. We should probably get going soon. So someone who's going to support you through the event and understands what the plan is. What else can make the event easier? Is it having snacks on hand? Is it calling ahead of time to see, asking about a space that might be appropriate for you to rest in? And then, yeah, prioritizing rest. So radical rest before and after the event. You might have to clear your calendar beforehand, clear your calendar after to make sure that you're well rested after the event. So why did I have a crash? This is the question that people will often ask. Despite their best laid plans, they find sometimes that they do end up in post-exertional malaise. Long COVID is a condition that is episodic in nature. It can fluctuate, it can be unpredictable, and sometimes symptoms can get flared up even when you don't plan on it happening. Having a crash or an episode of post-exertional malaise doesn't mean that you failed at managing it. It is part of the picture. It's important to note that if you get sick from a different virus or illness, that your long COVID symptoms can get flared up also. Some people also find that it takes a little longer for them to recover from other illnesses as well. When you're feeling more stress in life, when other life events happen, sometimes people experience other types of stressful events. Maybe a family member or a friend becomes ill or passes away. Sometimes these can trigger symptoms as well. Changes in your body and the environment can flare your symptoms. So sometimes people forget, like we talked about earlier, that with sometimes with changes in weather, your symptoms can get flared up. Sometimes if there's different processes happening or changes in your body, that can also flare up your symptoms. Planning for a crash or planning on how to manage post-exertional malaise, rest is the key for recovery. When your body is in that state of symptoms being flared up, the best thing you can do is to stop and rest. Reduce your activities as much as possible. Anything that doesn't have to be done or can be delayed till later, leave them for later. Might be good to talk to friends and family ahead of time about what you need when these crashes or post-exertional malaise episodes happen. How can they support you through your recovery? Could they, drive your kids somewhere? Could they bring a meal that week? What would be most helpful? Some people make themselves a kit, so keeping those needed items close by, whether it's snacks, having water, or electrolytes, having their phone or medications close by so that they're prepared for a crash. Having frozen meals on hand, easy to grab options when you cannot get up to make yourself a meal. Try to limit your trips up and down the stairs if you can. So, whether it's somebody else bringing things up for you or having them where you need them. Wherever possible, reschedule your appointments. And if you really do have to go somewhere, see if somebody can drive you or hire a taxi or an Uber. Minimize the episodes of post-exertional malaise, and to help monitor your fatigue levels, it might be helpful to track your symptoms. If this is new to you, it might be helpful to try to keep it as simple as possible. So maybe you track your top 3 symptoms every day just to see what levels they're at. You can just rate it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being pretty low, 5 being flared up. You can use either an activity log, or there are apps out there that can be helpful for this purpose. And when monitoring your symptoms, try to look for the trends over time as opposed to focusing on a specific day. So look for how things are doing over weeks or months. An example of how you might want to track your activities. So this is available online. There's a website there at the bottom through World Physiotherapy. So this helps you track your activities over the span of a week. So the top there are the hours of the day, and the days of the week are listed down the left-hand side. So this is a good way to visually see, when are you doing high energy level activities? When are you doing low or medium? So you can color code them, red being high energy, orange being low energy. Rest periods are in green, sleep is in blue. And so at a glance, you can kind of see, perhaps on Tuesday, I had a lot of red and not enough rest. On Friday, maybe I didn't sleep well, and that's why I don't feel as well on Saturday. The other thing to track on here are post-exertional symptom exacerbations. So when are you experiencing a crash? So that would be marked with an X in this schedule. So it's a helpful exercise just to give you a snapshot of what a week looks like. You can very clearly see if you use the colors, whether there's too much of something or not enough of something else. So it's a good activity to just give you a view of what a week is like for you. Way to track your symptoms is the Visible app. There are many apps out there that can help you track things like your heart rate, your symptoms, give you lots of feedback around the information it gathers, say through a watch. Some of them can be hard to interpret or to sort of learn how to use. The Visible app is one that was developed by people with chronic illness and long COVID. It's a simpler app in the sense that it doesn't require a wearable, so you don't need to have a watch that you wear. It uses your phone camera to get your heart rate, and then it asks you to track symptoms, rate them, and over time it will give you a score in terms of where you're at, and it will start to give you feedback about maybe today is a day where you need to rest more. Maybe today you're looking a bit more stressed. So it'll start to give you some feedback around how you're doing based on your symptom ratings and your heart rate. Summary, we went through different types of exertion, so covering not just the physical, cognitive, but a really range of types of exertion you might experience. We talked about post-exertional malaise, and post-exertional symptom exacerbation is not the same as deconditioning. Pacing can help you manage your fatigue and decrease your episodes of PEM or PESE. Really look at how you can save energy wherever you can. And if you do end up in post-exertional malaise, rest is the key for recovery. Post-exertional malaise can happen even with the best laid plans. So be kind to yourself and plan for how to manage these episodes. Tracking your activities and symptoms can help you to manage your fatigue. So that's it for this session. Thank you for watching. We'll see you at the next one.